Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Amanda, for your kind introduction. If you'll bear with me, I want to say a few thank yous, particularly to my ministers and some of our supporters who I think deserve recognition. Can I start with my ministerial team? You've already heard from the wonderful Priti Patel, who did a great job in that session, is doing a wonderful job in the department, but also alongside her we've got Justin Tomlinson, Baroness Ross Altman, and Shailesh Vara, who's doing two jobs because he also does Justice Department today, and I see them lined up here today. I wonder if we can give them a big round of applause for their hard work as well. There's one particular man who was wondering why I left him out, and I want to say this. David, Lord Freud, has served with me over the last 5 years. He has been a remarkable support and a great advocate of welfare reform. Together, I think we have done much, and together I know we will do more. But what you don't know also is David does not take a salary. So driven and determined is he that he wants to put something back to his country. David, I don't thank you enough. Thank you very, very much indeed for all the work that you do. And then a few unsung people. Our parliamentary private secretaries, David Rutley, my one who works hard, and Alex Shelbrook, who do all the hard work they do. And then the two other individuals who work as MPs and ministers, Natalie Evans from the Lords and Guy Opperman, who works very hard with us. And then all my advisors, the advisors to us, the political advisors who invariably don't get named, but I'm going to today, Lizzie, Flora, and Ed. And one particular thank you to somebody who is now leaving me, who is going to the House of Lords, who's been absolutely brilliant alongside us. That's Philippa Stroud. Philippa, thank you very, very much indeed for all your hard work and helping us. And I want a final thank you to all the civil servants who have worked hard for us, including in my private office. I actually want to thank all of you as well. I don't think you've been thanked enough. You've had to come through the lineup outside of the bile and hatred of what is now the Labour Party. That is who they really are. That is what they represent. And while I'm on that subject, I also want to say, I think in the hall here today, I have a previous minister, Esther McVeigh. Esther, I don't know if you are here. If you are, Esther, I want to thank you for all your hard work. I can't see you. But I just want to say one thing, and one thing quickly. Given all that bile and horridness, I suppose, going on outside, Esther had to put up with the most appalling campaign against her. It was violent, it incited violence, and worse, it incited violence against women. Esther put up with that and only just lost at the last election. I want to say that in politics today, there should be no room for that kind of nastiness and foul abuse. And there was one person that associated themselves with that, one John MacDonald, who is now the Shadow Chancellor. So I have a little challenge for Mr. Corbyn. You talk about a new politics that is particularly friendly to women, and I absolutely support that and agree with that. There's no room for that nasty bile that goes on. But I want to say to him that his Shadow Chancellor now needs to recognise that in associating himself with that foul campaign, he did something wrong. He needs to apologise. So, Mr. Corbyn, get him to apologise, and now we can reset the balance. The conference, after perhaps the longest and hardest fought election that I can remember in recent history, we, the Conservative Party, were asked to form a government by the British people. Not for us, the electoral easy road of unfunded promises and sleights of hand over borrowing. We stood on our record of achievement and committed to completing the job we'd started. And the public responded. But we need to remind ourselves that in May, despite all the difficulties faced by so many families as a result of Labour's Great Recession, the British people asked us to complete the job of sorting out the mess. And they did this for three simple reasons. First, I believe, they wanted economic stability whilst reforming welfare, education and health. They recognize they need security, which is why we must and do pledge to defend our people from the many threats that they face both at home and abroad. And they hope for real opportunity in a country that values the hard work that they do. So now, for the first time in nearly 25 years, we as a party, as a government, have a full mandate from the people to govern according to a Conservative manifesto. And for 5 years, I spent time working in a coalition government. I can tell you this, conference, thank God I'm back as the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions in a Conservative government, and I will act accordingly. But I also tell you this, we promise to be the party of working people, committed to ensuring that those who work hard would do well. And I make this other pledge. Conference, we won the election on that promise, and that is exactly what we will deliver. I promise you. At the heart of our economic recovery, though, is welfare reform. Standing here in 2015, you know, it's quite easy, I think, for us to be guilty of forgetting the mess we inherited when the coalition government took office some 5 years ago. This was Labour's legacy when they left power after 13 long years. Nearly 1 in 5 households with no one working. The number of households where no one ever worked had nearly doubled. Long-term unemployment doubled between 2008 and 2010. Nearly 1.5 million people had been on benefits for almost all of the previous decade. And as a country, we were spending some £203 billion on benefits and tax credits, a 60% rise under Labour. This bonanza had cost and was costing every hard-working household an extra £3,000 a year. This was Labour's legacy to us when we last took office. And the task that we faced was enormous. Yet in 5 years, just look what we had managed to achieve. 2 million more people in work today than in 2010. More women in work than ever before. More lone parents in work than ever before. More older people in work than ever before. Rising employment for young people. Over 200,000 more disabled people in work this year than last year. The number of workless households at a record low. And perhaps most important of all, the proportion of households in social housing with someone in work is at the highest since records began. Conference, against the odds, we have delivered. So our record already is clear. Employment up, growth up, the deficit down, taxation down. Conference, in 2010, I pledged to reform the welfare system directly to you in the first speech that I made. And as we roll out universal credit, we will ensure that work pays always better than welfare. So at last, I can say we are bringing to an end Labour's something-for-nothing culture, so imbibed throughout the whole system that they left us. But the job is not done yet. There is much more still to do. Let me start with the sickness benefit. This is Labour's last great legacy. Almost half of the people on employment support allowance have been on that benefit for more than 2 years. And this is despite the majority of these sickness claimants saying that they would like to work. The employment support allowance has Labour's essential mistake, I believe, fundamentally at its heart, that people are somehow passive victims. Of course, if you treat people as passive, that is eventually what they will become. And it's no wonder when the system makes doctors ask a very simplistic question, are you too sick to work at all? If the answer is yes, then they're signed off work, perhaps, as it turns out, forever. So I believe that doesn't work, and we need to look to change that system and the assumption that underpins it. Conservative philosophy is rooted in human nature, not in utopianism or in the empty pity, but in the yearning of people to make a better life for themselves and their children. And that is why we don't think of people not in work as victims to somehow be sustained on government handouts. No, we here want to help them to live lives independent of the state. The evidence of our reforms is that people respond to incentives. We know that. We know that in our hearts. They take opportunities. They adapt to a changing environment. They do all that they need, and all the time what they need from us is to help them, not just adjudicate their problem. Many people who are sick or disabled want to work. We know that. Our reforms, therefore, are about making this possible, smoothing the path from worklessness to work so that people don't lose out if they take a job or take more hours. We want to make the right choice, the logical choice, which is why we are talking to groups about making this change right now. We won't lift you out of poverty by simply transferring taxpayers' money to you. With our help, I say to them, you will work your way out of poverty. That is the pledge that we make to those who need our support. And that is why we are abolishing Labour's relative poverty measure, which led over a number of years to a huge distortion in the way that we supported people through the system. Labour's method of rotating people through the tax credits above an income line by paying them some more money doesn't deal with the root causes of why they are there unable to earn an income. To define someone really as £1 below the line as poor or £1 above the line and you're not poor disguises the real cause of the poverty that they are in. And worse, that critical income line moves in line with overall incomes. So here is the absurdity. For example, when the last Labour government crashed the economy, overall incomes in Britain fell. People in that recession had less money. Yet as they did so, the median income line fell as well. And that meant, according to Labour's measure, that poverty also fell. Yet absurdly, when the economy grows, poverty also apparently rises. So according to that measure, a bad economy is good for poverty and a growing economy is bad for poverty. It's absolutely ridiculous. What utter nonsense. How can you judge yourselves on the basis of an arbitrary figure? We need to get to the root causes. And in chasing that income line, that ridiculous income line that Labour measured, they spent huge sums of taxpayers' money. And let's give you a figure on this, which is quite interesting. Annual spending on tax credits tripled, rising by over £20 billion. And overall, £175 billion was spent on tax credits alone in the 7 years before the 2010 election. A staggering 9 out of 10 families with children in Britain were eligible for tax credits. That is not a benefit system worth the name. That becomes a bribe. So we want to focus now on the causes of poverty. The causes, not just the symptoms. Too many people's lives, I believe, remain blighted by poor life chances, more likely to get into poverty, and worse, they will remain there. And being poor isn't just because the government doesn't give you enough money. We need to deal with the reasons, the real root causes. That is why, for the first time, we are looking at measuring educational attainment amongst families. We are also looking at worklessness, drug and alcohol addiction problem, debt, and family stability. These are key components for why certain people and certain families do not manage to earn enough money. And it's not about conference, it's never about who's to blame, but for us, it's about what to blame for poverty. The root causes are the things we need to tackle, and for too long, Labour focused on the wrong thing. And this brings me to the second great reform of the new government. See, I have long believed that the bedrock of a good society and the first defense against poverty is at its best bigger than big business, stronger than government, and more compassionate than charities. It is, of course, the family. When families are strong, then there is no stopping us. Then children learn firsthand what grown-up responsibility looks like. They understand that we are dependent, not on government, but on each other, that everyone has to pull their weight, but no one gets left behind. And the last Labour government pushed the family out of public policy almost completely. They made it hard for couples starting out together, for parents of small children, for people looking after their own parents. It's no wonder that so many families are weakened because of their relationships between parents have broken down. And among rich countries, this is really quite remarkable. Among rich countries, we inherited from Labour the 5th worst record of family stability in the world. And yet, it doesn't have to be like this. To look out for your family is the most basic and the best of human impulses. And we need to make it easier for people to fulfill that impulse. So this government will have its reforms, will all be about making families stronger. From childcare to relationship support, we have already been delivering. I know money doesn't make a relationship, that marriage or a family needs more than economic incentive. But when the incentives go in the opposite direction, when they discourage couples from having families and staying together, we have a problem. This government is, however, removing that problem and helping families on benefits to stay together. And I'm hugely proud of all of this. The government's decision to restore the married couples allowance, putting marriage back where it belongs at the bedrock of our approach to family life, that is a bedrock Conservative position, and I am proud of that. And importantly, the new universal credit will ensure that benefit systems looks at families, not just individuals. We're going further. For the Prime Minister has asked me to ensure that everything we do in government will meet the test of strengthening families. This is the first time a government will ever do this. And that is a responsibility, therefore, I take incredibly serious. And I look forward to working with colleagues across government to ensure that the first question we ask is always, does this help families to be stronger as a result of this policy? For that is the right question for a one-nation government. So I want to conclude by explaining the great principle that underlies my approach to family policy and to the welfare system in particular. You may remember when George Osborne unveiled his budget this year, and I was apparently seen punching the air like I'd won the lottery. Well, I make no apologies for that. The announcement that got me going, frankly, was one that a lot of people I know never thought they would ever hear from a Conservative Chancellor. The introduction of a national living wage. Just savour that for a second. The Conservative Chancellor of a Conservative government has introduced a national living wage. What a wonderful, wonderful thing that is. We should be proud of that and all that that means. And the reason is quite simple. We need to make sure always that work pays better than welfare. We have to raise the value of work, but not as Labour tried to do, with big taxpayer subsiding all over the place, with extra help through wages and then through their terrible tax credits. As Conservatives, we don't want people to work just for tax receipts. We have a purpose. We want people to work because it's best for them, their families and their communities. Families without work, communities without work. Believe me, I have seen enough of it over the years to know what that does to people and to their families. No amount of benefits can make up for the devastation of long-term, widespread, deep-rooted unemployment. So our reforms have a very simple principle at the heart of them, and that is this: we are bound to restore lives. And to do this, our reforms need to, first of all, reach out and rekindle people's sense of reliance, rebuild their sense of self-worth, and reawaken that responsibility that is innate in every one of us. So this is what we must do to rebuild the vital cornerstone of a strong economy. And that is why our reforms, quite simply, must be about ending poverty and not entrenching it, must be about restoring lives and not parking them, and being fair to the vast bulk of taxpayers who pay for other people's welfare whilst taking responsibility for them. They need people to champion them as well. And that's why the limit on child tax credit for more than 2 children is about bringing home to parents the reality, the simple reality, that children do cost money. And if you have more children, you have to make the choices that others who are not in the same position make, and not assume that taxpayers' money lets you avoid the consequences of such choices. That, to me, is taking responsibility, and that is fair. And it's what the benefit cap is about. People shouldn't earn more than those who are not on benefits, who are in work. And as a result of the benefit cap, it's worth reminding everyone that households are more likely now to move into work, with more than 16,000 capped households making that choice to move into work for the first time. Simply, that's taking responsibility, and that's fair as well. And it's what the claimant commitment is about, when we ensure that benefit claimants now sign up to an agreement on day one that they will work with us to get back to work, and we will help to support them. That's taking responsibility, and that's fair as well. Obligations and responsibility go together, and that's the basis of our welfare reforms. Fairness at their heart. Fairness. Fairness. You know, this runs through all I believe. It is what I grew up believing is critical. For me, it's an emotional touchstone. And as I was writing this speech this week, I found myself being reminded, quite simply, of 75 years ago, and my father. My father was amongst a number of others who fought in the skies above to stop Britain being overrun and to free Europe from a hideous and perverted tyranny. Now, I think my father was a remarkably brave man. He had 5 gallantry medals and fought throughout the war. Yet for all of that, he taught me something very simple. It was that to him, the British people believe in fairness. That single concept for him underpinned the decency of the British people and his love of his country, which represented what I believe and he believed was the best, often in an unforgiving world. I share his view that there is no other people in the world more tolerant, more fair-minded, and strong-willed than the great British people, this people of this remarkable nation. And that is the reason why I am here, and what I think sustains me, that overriding passion for my fellow countrymen and women. It is that same sense of fairness that I believe should make all of us want to help rebuild and restore those in this country who have been left behind. Not by tears and entreaties or slogans and protest, so beloved of the hard left, now running Labour. Rather, by the simple yet difficult act of helping to restore their lives to be the best that they can be through determination and not dependency. That is genuine compassion. And that is it. That compassion is, I believe, the reason are all here, all of us, every one of us that came here. Surely every one of us wants to know that what we do in government rebuilds and restores the very least of us. That is our purpose. Not to rejoice today at victory, no matter how hard won, but to recommit, even rededicate ourselves to this simple yet vital task. I just want to say one other thing to you, and it's this. I've taken from my father that sense and love of my country. For me, it is the beginning and the end of the reason to be in politics. You know, we walk outside and we see that vile abuse and the left ranting and screaming at us and telling us all sorts of things. And I tell you, we stand up to them and we will not be moved. It is our country that we care for and our countrymen and women. The natural decency and determination and fairness of the British people, that's why we are here, that's what it is all about. That love of our country and the people that we are here for. And I remind all of you that whatever happens in the next few years, no matter how bumpy the road is, remember, it is for these people that we govern, that we care for, and that we will allow nothing to stand in the way of. That is our determination. That is the true reason for being in government. And friends, on the 7th of May, the British people honored us. Now, let us honor them. Thank you.